Today we got chapter 11, day 2. We're going to be using that area formula we just learned yesterday and the other formulas for parallelograms, triangles, and circles to go ahead and find a certain part of their respective shapes. Okay, so don't forget we got that formula right there for all our parallelograms. Area equals base times height. When you're given the area this time, though, of the shape, we're going to use that formula that we know, and we're going to solve for the variable and then label in units. So we just emphasized yesterday that when you're finding the area, you have to label it in units squared. Well, this time we're actually using the area to solve for a side. And so because we're talking about a side, our length is just going to be in units. Here's your 3 steps to do these types of problems. This time, again, we're given the area. We're going to go ahead and label the variables. Step 1 that we know. Write the equation. That's based on the formula. And then we're going to do our algebra steps to solve for that unknown variable. Okay? So for example 1, let's go ahead and check this out. They give you the area, 64 feet squared. So again, that area, just as a refresher, is all this shaded region that we're talking about. They give you the height, or the base right here. Remember, there's that one side. And then they're labeling the height. Don't forget, for parallelograms, that height is creating the 90 degrees. Okay? So for step 1, label what we know. We know A is 64. That's our area. The base is going to be 8. And then the height, we don't actually know, right? It's unknown. So for step 2, we're using that formula based on the shape. So again, the area of a rectangle or a parallelogram shape is going to be base times height. And now we just have to plug in what we know. So we know the area is 64. Right, that's coming from up here. We know the base is 8, but what we don't know is the height. So we got to leave that as the unknown variable. For step 3, all you're doing is actually solving. So we have the 64 equals 8 times h. The way that we solve is we divide by 8 to get h by itself. So you end up with h equals 8 because 64, let's go ahead and just double check in the calculator. 64 divided by 8, you end up with 8. Okay? So the height equals 8. Look back at what we had. We had feet and feet squared. So the height is going to be 8 feet. Okay? So this time today, we're using the total area to find for one of the lengths. If we look at example 2, again, they're giving us the area. 92 meters squared. So we know that A, the area, equals 92 meters squared. If we look at this one, this time again, this is a parallelogram. So they give us the base as the one side. So base is going to be 16. And the height, again, is that length that creates the 90-degree angle. So this time we don't know the height again. So the height is going to be x. That's what we're going to label it. Just like the last time, use the formula for our parallelogram, which is base times height. And again, plug in what we know. Area is going to be 92. Base is going to be 16. Height this time is going to be x. It's not going to stay as h because they're actually giving it a different variable. So now, for step 3, go ahead and use your solving skills to do so. The way we get rid of the 16 is we divide by it. So then the x, or the height, is going to be 92 divided by 16, which is going to be 5.75. So just like the last problem, notice the similarities here. You're given the total area, plug it in for A. You're given the base, plug it in for B. This time you're given x instead of h for height, but you're still plugging that in. And then you solve for that unknown x. So x is going to be 5.75, but this time it is meters, not feet. Okay? Don't forget your label. No squared this time because we're finding a length. On the next page, we're going to go ahead and do the same concept, but this time we're going to talk about triangles. So let's bring that triangle formula back. Don't forget, here it is. You should have it. That's the area formula of a triangle. Now, again, we're given the area of the shape. That's what we're given. And we're going to use that formula above to then solve for the variable. For triangles, because the formula is a little bit different, our steps are a little bit different. Step 1, label the variables. We did that on the last one. Step 2, write the equation. We did that on the last one. Step 3, we're going to simplify the fraction. That might be a little bit helpful. And then step 4, solve for the variable. So for example 3 here, let's go through the same process. Step 1, label what you know. We know area is 15. We know that the base this time is unknown. So B is going to be unknown. And then this time, we know the height. So the height is going to be 3 because that creates that 90-degree angle with our base. Step 2, go ahead and plug it in to the actual formula. So area equals base times height divided by 2. Plug in what we know. We do know A is 15 equals B, we don't know, so it stays B, times 3 over 2. So here we are. For the next step, it says simplify the fraction. So we don't know B, but we can simplify 3 over 2. We divide 3 over 2, it becomes 1.5. So we now have 15 equals 1.5, because that's 3 over 2, times B. This is making it a lot easier to get B by itself, because now in order to get B by itself, we just need to divide by that other value. So divide by 1.5, and then B is going to equal whatever 15 divided by 1.5 is, which in this case is 10. Okay, so again, it's very similar to the parallelogram approach. The only difference is because you have that fraction, that one extra step before you solve is to simplify that fraction based on the values you know. Now that we have that variable, let's talk about the units. It's in yards, so the base is going to be 10 yards. For example 4, I took away the little guidelines for the steps, but again, we're still doing the same thing. A is going to equal 66. The base right here is given 11, because that's the side of the triangle. We get 11. And then the height, remember, is that vertical 90-degree angle with our base. So that's going to be x. This time we don't know it. So this time we don't know the height. Go ahead and plug it into our formula. So remember, our formula is area equals base times height. So 66 is the area. The base is 11 times the height all over 2. Remember, it's a triangle, so you got to be careful with that. Go ahead and find the fraction. So 66 is equal to whatever 11 over 2 is, which is 5.5 times x. Remember, we're trying to get x by itself. So if it's being multiplied by 5.5, all we do is divide by 5.5 at that time. So 66 divided by 5.5 is going to be 12. So x equals 12. Those will cancel, and x is by itself. So x equals 12, but let's leave enough space for our units, which in this case is centimeters. So again, very similar to the rectangle and the parallelogram problems. The only difference is make sure you have that fraction, so you got to do the one extra step of simplifying the fraction before you solve. The last problem I want to do here doesn't have a diagram because they didn't give us one this time, but it's talking about finding the radius of a circle that already has an area of 58 square inches. Okay, just because it doesn't have a diagram, that's fine. We know it's talking about a circle, so let's go ahead and bring back the circle formula. We didn't write it down here, but we know it based on yesterday's notes. Area equals pi r squared, right? Plug in what we know. It's telling us, it doesn't have it on a diagram, but it's telling us that the area is 58 square inches. So A equals 58, and the radius says find, so obviously we don't know it yet. A is 58 equals pi. Remember, pi is just a number, r squared. Now this one takes a couple extra steps because we just got to get r by itself. So step 1, get rid of the number that's not with r. So if pi is being multiplied by r, we're going to divide by pi. So right now, let's go ahead and jump to what we got. We got 58 r squared equals 58 over pi. Now we got to get r by itself, and this square is in the way. Okay, so the opposite of squaring is going to be square rooting, so we have to square root that entire right side. These will then cancel, and you end up with r equals the square root of 58 over pi. Now we got to just be careful when we plug it in. So we're going to go ahead and do the square root, which is second, and then this button, that's how you get a square root of 58 divided by pi, which remember we showed yesterday, that's that little blue symbol there. So second, and then that button, hit enter, you get 4.3. Okay, so the radius would be roughly 4.3, and it's talking about inches, so that would be inches as our unit.